Thank you, Sonali.
My friends Jan Khan, ladies and gentlemen. 19th Amendment, what was the objective behind the 19th Amendment? Now if we go back to the period prior to 8th January, if we listen to any politician, almost all of them, except one political party, everybody said, we want to abolish the executive principles. The president said so. The JDP said so. The UNDP said so. Everybody said so. But what did we ultimately find in the bill? Now, if you want to abolish executive presidency, Rohan would probably agree with me. He asked a first-year law student, if you want to abolish executive presidency, what's the section that you would abolish? What is the section in the Constitution that you would change? Article 4, sub-article B says, the executive power of the people is with the president. Now, the government, the bill that was published by the government, didn't even attempt to amend Article 4. So it was quite obvious that there was no real intention to abolish the executive president. Although that was the key declaration that they made, that we are coming here because it's so dangerous, we have to do away with the executive president. And I think most of you might agree with me that that was the message that was given to the people. People voted to abolish the presidency. But the bill doesn't amend the section by which the presidency is created. There was one little political party, I think it was JHU, who said, no, don't abolish the executive presidency, but you need to change it. You have to limit his powers. Now, if the Constitution in Article 4B says that the executive power is solely with the president, even to limit, you need to change that section. Because the section says executive power of the people will be exercised by the president. So if you want somebody else also to exercise executive power, then you need to amend that. Now let's look at the 1972 Constitution. Now what does the 1972 Constitution say? The corresponding section in the 1972 Constitution is Article 5. Article 5 says that the executive power of the people will be exercised through the President and the Cabinet of Ministers. So one would have expected at least to amend Article 4 to include, even if they do not want to take away the President altogether from Article 4, at least to include the Cabinet of Ministers who can exercise executive power. But they didn't do that. Although the government said we are coming to abolish executive presidency, or let's say to change the powers of the executive presidency, they don't touch that. Why? We need to know the answer. Now, instead of taking away the powers of the president, if you wanted to give certain powers to the Cabinet of Ministers through such an amendment, and through that achieve your objective, they could have done. But they didn't. Then the next question is, what did they ultimately present before the people? Now, Bill tried to give the powers to the Prime Minister, that is some of them, and to some extent they achieved those objectives in one clause. But basically they failed in abolishing or changing much of the powers of the president. Because the Supreme Court found, Supreme Court did not approve the bill in the form it was presented. Because as long as the executive powers are vested with the president, how can somebody else advise the president to exercise the executive power? Now, in the 1972 Constitution, executive power was given to the Cabinet of Ministers. So, if executive power is given to the Cabinet of Ministers, now in Article 5, sub-article D or something, it said that the executive powers are the Cabinet of Ministers and the President. Then in Article 27 of the 1972 Constitution, it said that whenever the President has to exercise that executive power, he has to take the advice of the Prime Minister, who is the head of the Cabinet of Ministers. Now that procedure was not adopted. No power was transferred from the President to the Cabinet of Ministers. Now, instead of transferring that power to the Cabinet of Ministers and thereby empowering the Prime Minister to advise the President, this bill sought to give certain powers to the head of the Cabinet or the Prime Minister to advise the President. Now, first you must have the power to ask somebody to do that. Now that is what Dr. Paulina de Silva did. Why did Dr. Paulina de Silva, when drafting the 1972 Constitution, say that the executive power should be given both to the President and the Cabinet of Ministers, and the Cabinet of Ministers could advise the President with regard to the manner of exercise of executive power. So that is why this bill failed, because the Supreme Court said, since the executive power is with the President, the ultimate decision maker must be the President and nobody else. So if some other body, if some other person is going to exercise that power and tell the President how to use it, then it is in total violation to Article 3, which says that the sovereignty is in the people. Now how it works is that the power of the people, the sovereignty of the people, is through Article 4 given to the President. You can give it not only to the President, you can give it to somebody else. You can give it to the Cabinet of Ministers. Then the Cabinet of Ministers certainly could advise the President. But here, instead of doing that, whilst keeping the executive presidency intact, could they expect the President, who has all that executive power, to listen to somebody where the people has not given that power? Now in the 1972 Constitution, the people gave the executive power to the Cabinet. So the Cabinet could advise the President. Here, the people have given the executive power only to the President. So that is why this bill did not succeed. Now, Jayampati said, gave an indication as to why that was so. Not that Jayampati or his team did not know how to draft the Constitution. The government decided, for political reasons probably, not to amend Article 4. Now, Jayampati said about the election fatigue. Now, if the people of this country has given the executive power to the President, and the Constitution says that if you want to meddle with it, you have to come back to us and get our permission at a referendum. Any legitimate government should voluntarily, not wait till the Supreme Court says so, call for a referendum and place it before the people. But they don't want to do it. In the 13th Amendment, you will recall, the same thing happened. Now I can understand with regard to a normal bill, if with regard to some clause, say an amendment to the Road Development Authority bill or something like that, the Supreme Court says that particular provision needs the approval of the people at a referendum because it violates some constitutional provision. Then you amend that particular clause to avoid a referendum because for every bill you can't go before the people. One can understand. But with regard to the 13th Amendment and the 19th Amendment, those were major changes done to the structure of the Constitution and to the government. 13th Amendment from a unitary state, though they continue to call it a unitary state, the entire structure of the country, governmental structure was changed. In the 19th Amendment, they are supposed to change from executive government, executive presidential system to that of a Westminster system. Now in such a crucial thing, if you need to go before the people, why don't you go? Because the answer is not because of election fatigue. You know that if you go before the people, you lose. Now, in constitutional making, you must be honest. If you think that the people of this country will not approve it, don't do it. The NGOs or the civil society people, the Colombo elite can't decide for the people of this country. The people must decide. That is what you call sovereignty. People must choose who is going to exercise executive power. Is it the president or is it the cabinet of ministers or somebody else? Now, this whole exercise, both the 13th Amendment, although we passed the 13th Amendment, we all know that it is not properly functioning. Why? Because the people were not with the 13th Amendment. The 19th Amendment, you can get a Buddhist priest with a megaphone to say that everybody who opposed the 19th Amendment are traitors. Deshadrohi. Now I belong to that category because I oppose the 19th Amendment. Now you can make political speeches, but if you really think that the people of this country are for it, then you ought to have gone before it. Now that is not the real issue. There was another issue that the government confronted, and if one looks at the 2000 August Constitution, you will find a clue to that. Now, Article 4, the provision similar to Article 4 says there that the President will act on the advice of the Cabinet of Ministers with regard to the powers of the reservists. And with regard to the other powers given to the provincial councils, the President would act on the advice of the Board of Ministers of the province. So there was a demand from minority groups against giving all this power even to the Cabinet of Ministers. Now, this 2000 August, that provision, if they brought in place of the fourth one, if they didn't bring, then they would have had to give the entire set of powers to the Cabinet of Ministers. Then probably Mr. Vigneswaran would have objected to it. Please don't give my powers to the Cabinet in the central government. Now, to avoid that embarrassment is the reason why they did not amend Article 4. Because neither the people of the South or the people who support the Provincial Council did approve giving all these powers to a Cabinet of Ministers. Now you can imagine a situation where, say, education. Now in a situation like that, both Mr. Akhil Viraj Karyavasan from the central government and whoever who is the education minister in the provincial, both will be advising the president. Now that is the conflict that we are faced with. since the amendment of the Constitution by the 13th Amendment, we have put ourselves in a complicated situation, which is not as easy as we think. Now, that was the declared objective, one of the declared objectives of this government. The other, they said, we want to make the existing commissions independent. Now, according to them, the existing commissions are not independent. If they are not independent, because it is not independent, they want to convert it to independent commission. Now, I wonder why people are being brought before those commissions if they are not independent. And people are then straightaway driven to the remand prison if they themselves believe that the existing commissions are not independent. Let's assume that they are not independent. Now, you want to make it into independent commissions. So that was the second object. Now, I'll deal with that in a moment, but before that I want to note another important thing. With regard to the J2 demand that you should not abolish the executive presidency, but have restraints, have checks and balances, and modify the nature of the exercise of executive power. Now, and Sobita Hamdro, you always say, we want a president who is responsible to parliament. That was the key phrase that was used on all election platforms. We want a president, we don't want a person who is above the law. What did this government say prior to election? The Rajapaksa is above the law. Then they said, we want a president who will be responsible to parliament. Both those assertions are false. Why? Because if you take Mr. J.R. Jayawardena's 1978 Constitution, Article 42 of the Constitution says that the President shall be responsible to Parliament. Now, what did this bill do? They abolished the Section 42, slowly amended that chapter, and put the same clause in Article 33. So, Article 42 of Mr. J.R. Jayawardena became Article 33 under the Silva administration. So, from 1978, the President is responsible to Parliament. Now, if you needed checks and balances, it could have been done with a normal bill of Parliament. Because if the Constitution says that the President is responsible to Parliament, how that accountability process is enforced could have been brought, that framework could have been brought, the provisions could have been brought within Article 42 and said how the Parliament could supervise and control the President without a constitutional amendment. So, people thought that the existing presidency is not responsible to Parliament, which is on a false premise. For their advantage, they made this false statement on election platform. Then you find that this presidency, the executive presidency is above the law. That is also wrong. Because our courts from the early 80s, no sooner the 1978 Constitution was promulgated and this immunity clause was put, the courts took the view that although the person is protected, his actions are not protected. You can challenge the actions of the president in court. Now, Vishwalingam was one such case. There are many other cases. So it is not correct to say that the president's powers cannot be challenged. You can't make him a respondent. You can't ask him to come to court. But if he does something wrong, you can certainly rectify by judicial review. So they showed this picture. Now my good friend Empathy mentioned the word Rajapaksa thrice within his 15 minutes. Now this Rajapaksa factor is another important factor in this 19th Amendment. Now we were told that this amendment is brought to abolish the executive presidency or change the executive presidency and make these commissions independent. But if one reads the 19th Amendment, you will find much more than that. Because there are 3 sets of disqualifications embodied in this 19th Amendment to disqualify both not only Mahinda Rajapaksa but members of his family. Now one is, of course, that a president who has been in office twice cannot contest. That, of course, everybody knew that they were going to abolish the 18th Amendment and make it only two times that you could contest. Then there is some provision which is less discussed. You will find that the threshold age of the presidential candidate was increased from 30 to 35. From 30 to 35. I was wondering why suddenly, because I can't recall anybody raising this issue in any forum. I just checked, I went to the Wikipedia and just checked what Namal Rajapaksa's age is. And he had born on the 10th of April 1986. Now, probably, I don't know whom they are trying to prevent, but I imagine that this Rajapaksa name is looming large when they were drafting this constitution, that they feared that if not the father, at least the son might become the president of this country in the future. So by raising it from 30 to 35, they prevented him from contesting the next presidential election, which might be held somewhere in 2020, because he wouldn't reach the age of 35 by that time. Then there is also a disqualification saying that if you have a dual citizenship, that you can't contest a parliamentary election. Now it's in the media, I don't know, I don't meet these people, that Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Mr. Basil Rajapaksa are dual citizens. So if you are a dual citizen, you cannot contest a parliamentary election. So you disqualify Mahinda Rajapaksa, you disqualify Basil Rajapaksa, you disqualify Gotabaya Rajapaksa, you disqualify Namal. So under the guise of saying we want to abolish executive presidency, we want to make this independent and so on, there are other objectives which that they try to achieve through this process. I must, since I have very few more minutes to address you, I want to address you on the constitution of the Constitutional Council. Now, I think there is some poison that is put into our constitution. That poison was there in the 17th Amendment also in a limited way. Now it is even worse. That is, if you take the composition of the Constitutional Council, there are 9 voting members. Now the Speaker does not have an original vote. There are 9 members who can vote. So the majority would be always 5. Now the 9 composition is 3 members are ex officio, the Speaker, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. So then we have 7 more. Out of the 10, 3 are ex officio. President nominates 1. Then you find 5 nominated jointly by the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. Then there is the 10th member nominated by agreement of the members of parliament of smaller parties. That is, parties that does not belong to that the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. Now these words are very important. By agreement of all the members of parliament, if you take the present composition, 14 members of the DNA, 7 members of the DNA can agree to nominate one person. That the members of parliament by agreement can decide. Now why didn't the framers of this constitution, give the liberty to the other members of parliament? Now, you find members of parliament from Digamadula who voted against this bill. There are members of parliament coming from Manohara, Kandy, Gaul, Manohara, Hambantota. Now, those members of parliament cannot get involved in this process. There is a deliberate attempt to keep those members of parliament out of this. And who decides? The Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. Of course it says, so I'll just give me 2 minutes. Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition decides for them. Now with regard to the DNA members, they can sit around a table, discuss, propose names, take a vote if necessary, and send their representatives. But a Digamadula member of parliament or a Hambantota member of parliament can't do that. Because the thinking and the decision making is going to be done by the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition for them. Now that is, the reason was said by no lesser person than Mrs. Chandrika Kumartunga in the Chelvanayaka Memorial Lecture. She said, the objective of this exercise was to dismantle the monopoly of the Sinhalese. So if you leave out all these 225 members except the TNA and the DNA, none of them can get involved in this. Mr. Vikram Singha, who come from Colombo West, and Mr. Nimal Silva can decide the future for all those members of parliament. Not only that, then he goes on to say that when you are appointing the 5 members, you must maintain the pluralistic character of Sri Lanka, of the council, pluralistic character. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not opposed to minorities or people of different class, race, religion, being in any. Now, every day I appear before the courts, before various judges from who belong to various religions and races. We have no issue. But a deliberate manipulation of the composition on the basis of race, religion, because the section says the pluralistic character includes social differences. I think they use the word social diversities. Now what is social diversity? That caste, religion. Now when you are selecting, if you want to make these commissions independent, do you want to look at their caste, the religion, from which race they belong, to make the existing commissions which they say is not independent? Now, why do they say that it is not independent? Because the president has nominated them. Now, president is elected by 50% of the people of this country. Now, you remove the president and you find 5 nominated by the leader of the opposition and the Prime Minister, and together with their own vote, 7 will be the will represent the will of the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. So you replace the president with the will of two other politicians, who represents two electorates. The president represents 50% of the entire population. Now, how on earth could anyone argue that the will of two who represent only a section of the community will make it more independent than the president's nominees? So, it doesn't stop there. Now, when you say pluralistic character of Sri Lanka means you find 7 identified ethnic groups in Sri Lanka. You find several religions. You find several castes. Now, all those will be considered when the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition nominate them. They don't stop it there. When the council meets around a table to nominate members to the commissions, it says you must endeavor to maintain that pluralistic character. So when you are appointing a member to the police commission or to the finance commission, of course, it's fixed under the 13th Amendment. It has to be given to the 3 communities. But with regard to all other commissions, you have to maintain a pluralistic character. So if there is, say, the most suitable persons are, say, from the Muslim community, the first, the second, and the third, you don't give the second because you need a Malay, or you need a Catholic, or you need somebody of a Colombo Chetty to be appointed to that, because you want to maintain the pluralistic character. Now, that's the poison that you put into it. When I go and appear before a judge who belongs to a minority race, I don't think you don't think about his religion or race. You put this in the Constitution. The Constitutional Council members appoint the commissions based on this criteria. Those commissions will act in the interest. In the 17th Amendment, I must say, I'm sorry, just a few seconds. In the 17th Amendment, they say to look after their interests. They changed that because there was a lot of criticism against that. They changed the wording, but they reintroduced it through the 19th Amendment. That same poison that no modern democracy should entertain this kind of. I can understand in a country where there was apartheid, say if it was in South Africa, if we have a bad caste system in India, but in this country we have had a better civilized approach with regard to appointments. Since my time is over, I don't want to take it into Rohan's allocation, but may I say that the provisions of the 19th Amendment are much more with regard to that can be said about the 19th Amendment. And this is a piece of legislation that one should read with a lot of thought as to whether this is a law that we should have any longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Silva. Essentially, Mr. De Silva was talking about the mismatch between the political statements made before the elections and the amendment that was proposed by the government on the abolishment of the presidency. He also referred to the need for a referendum to make major changes to structures of government in order to preserve the sovereignty of the people. He also spoke about the fact that the current constitution, even before the 19th Amendment, in fact made the president accountable to parliament, and that there were immunity clauses for actions of the president, even if he was not personally liable. Mr. Silva also spoke about certain disqualifications introduced through the 19th Amendment for contesting presidential and parliamentary elections, which were politically motivated. And then he also spoke about the composition of the Constitutional Council, and that there was a deliberate manipulation of the provisions in terms of how it is composed.